Hey people, I'm Michael from the Kids Library and welcome to What's Inside My Computer. You might know me from the Scratch Junior or 3D printing programs. It's one of my first actual in real life video programs. Alright, I don't want to keep you waiting, so let's answer that question. What is inside my computer? Any guesses? Anything? Well, let's see. Answer is a bajillion things. And a lot of dust. Well, it's actually a lot less than a bazillion things. Right now in there it just kind of looks messy because of all those wires and all those bits of dust. So it's not too complicated when we take all those parts out and we look at them. So I'm going to take some of these parts out and I'm going to show you one by one what they do. First, let's look at these things called hard drive. First, let's look at these things called hard drives. Hard drives are what store all of your data, all of those memes, all those games that you have saved on a computer. That's where they put it. And I got two different ones here. One is kind of an older one, and this is why they called it a hard disk. Inside of there's a bunch of spinning little disks, and it records all that information magnetically. But now, I like to use this thing that's like a flash drive, but a lot faster. And it's getting much cheaper to buy these nowadays. So these things are a lot faster when you're trying to get access to your data. They're much more durable, and they're pretty small compared to these old kind of clunky ones now. So I really like these. And then, kind of like a hard drive, there are these things called RAM sticks. And those are like, say, if you're playing a game, that's where all the information about the game is. Normally it's on the hard drive, but when you boot up that game, all that information goes right here. It's kind of like your short-term memory, like you're walking and talking with a friend, that's all in the RAM, but stuff like your birthday and random song lyrics are going to be in your hard drive. You know? Now let's look at the brains of the operation. Now this is the single most important, probably the most expensive, and smallest part of a computer. It's the CPU. It's so important I had to buckle it out of the car seat here. So let's take a look at it. You got to be very careful when you're touching something like this. It's very sensitive. It's got little gold contacts on the bottom to connect to the motherboard. And all of the information that goes through anything that needs to be calculated, anything that needs to be moved, it's all handled by the CPU, this little chip here. And of course we cannot forget the octopus of the computer, the power supply. This plugs into the wall. It's usually got a number on it, and that's like the watts it can output. And it's got all these little tendrils going into the computer, powering the CPU, the whole motherboard, disk drives, the hard drives, all of that stuff comes straight from the power supply. And this is what holds the whole thing together. The motherboard. Everything connects there. That's why it's called the motherboard. The RAM, the hard drives connect here, the processor connects here, graphics card, if you have like a Wi-Fi card. You also have all of the fans connecting to the motherboard. And then you have all of your audio stuff. That's the stuff you see on the back side of the computer usually. You see all these USB ports, all these video ports, all the internet ports, all the audio ports, everything is on the motherboard. Which is why I'm using the spare one to show you rather than take that thing out, because that would be an hour of unscrewing and removing stuff and putting it back and all that. And one thing that I have that not all computers have is this thing called a GPU, or a graphics processing unit. And that lets me render big videos in HD. It lets me connect to a bajillion different monitors. It helps process graphics for like really, really fancy video games. And this thing is like so bulky and gets so hot. This has 3 fans. Amazing. And speaking of fans, practically every single thing in here has some kind of fan. Like the 3 ones on the GPU. There's a big one here for the CPU on this board. There's a big one behind it for the case. Glows, I like it. There's another one here. There's another one here. There's another one here on the right side. There's so many fans because stuff just heats up. Computer components heat up a ton. And just to show you how much those things can heat up, I'm going to do a little experiment and show you. So that little chip I showed you earlier, the CPU, that little thing runs so fast that it gets really hot. And it gets so hot inside of a computer that I can actually cook an egg on it. I'm going to do that because I thought it would be fun. And I'll show you when it's done. Oh yeah, and definitely don't try this at home. Well, I just took a photo of the egg at the end since it takes a little while to cook on a processor. Now, it looks pretty nasty because eggs aren't really supposed to be made on top of computers, but hey, it smelled great when I was cooking it. Really doubt these are going to taste good though, and I'm not going to try them anyway since the computer parts aren't clean. And once again, please never ever never try to do this at home. So now, desktops are kind of becoming more rare and rare. A lot of libraries like ours and schools use little computers like these. They don't take up nearly as much space and they don't cost as much. Or schools use Chromebooks too, but all of those still have the same parts as like a desktop computer. It's easier to show you on a big one like this, but inside of, say, like these, you'll still find the same kinds of parts. You got the CPU under that, you got a hard drive, all of those things. Everything's just miniaturized now. So, and every year, electronics manufacturers get better and better at making things smaller and smaller every year. Way back when they first made computers, they had one size of almost this library. Probably couldn't even run Minesweeper or anything. But now we have the tiniest computers in the palms of our hands. The last thing I wanted to mention is that it's not too hard to build a desktop computer like mine nowadays, especially with thousands of YouTube videos and other guides on how to do it. I built my first one when I was in middle school, and it was a really fun experience. But anyways, I hope you learned something interesting, and I wish you all a great rest of your day.